We're live.
We're live. Well, welcome everyone. Wanted to jump on a little bit early so that we can get everyone sorted, find out where everyone's from, and make sure that we are all here and ready to go for you guys. So while we wait for everyone to join us, let's talk a little bit about what's happening. We've obviously already opened the awards. And we now have less than 2 weeks left until the early bird pricing ends. So if you're looking to save a little bit of money, then you want to get all your entries in before 2 weeks from now. And don't forget, the way that you get early bird pricing is you have to check all the way out. That means you've got to upload all your entries, you've got to pick the categories, and you have to go all the way through the process of checking out, including entering your payment details, all that stuff. If your photos are in your cart, but you haven't finished checking out, then after the early bird pricing ends, the prices of the entries that are in your cart will go up. So you want to make sure you take advantage of that and check out all the way. But yeah, so if you're in the comments, remember you're watching us on YouTube. So we're here to answer your questions. We're doing these lives once a week as the competition is open, just to help answer any of your questions about entering, about your entries. So if you have any questions, just type it into the chat. It doesn't matter if that's what we're talking about right now. If you have a question about something completely off topic from what we're talking about, put it in the chat anyways. We'll answer every single question that comes through. So make sure you don't be shy about that. Just pop it in and we will get to every single question. Wanted to just say hello to everybody and get everyone started. We wanted to start a bit early so that we give people time to come in and say hi before we get into all the meaty parts of it.
We've learned from previous broadcasts that we should be doing this. There's a few things that have changed in the back end, and we're just making sure that we get on early and have a bit of fun. Just so you know, too, for those of you who are interested in coming to WPPI for the finals, obviously going there for the conference, for the trade show, for the final competition, the judging, the awards night, and all that kind of thing. There's been a lot of people talking about the Rio and what to expect, and the couple of questions that people ask: is it safe? Is it convenient? And is it conducive of having a good conference there? And we actually went there for my birthday a couple of months ago,
Yeah.
and we loved it. It's actually probably the biggest room of
Yeah.
any standard room of any hotel we've ever been in.
Yeah.
So because
It's
it's off
massive.
strip, it's a little bit more affordable than normal. And because we're locals, we hear about renovations going on all the time with all the bigger hotels. So Ria is certainly part of that. They're redoing a lot of the restaurants. Half the rooms have been renovated at the moment. We stayed at one of the newer ones. So the room was massive. It had a lounge suite. It had a dining area, like a little dining table and stuff, and the bathroom was big. And we went to the pool because we wanted to sort of see how it would feel like in terms of you sort of understand the crowd of the kind of people that would go to the pool. So for example,
True. Yeah.
if you go to Encore Beach Club or Tower Beach Club,
The
very different kind
party.
of clientele.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. That's right.
Different clientele than they would go to something like the Rio. And it was great. It was sort of family friendly,
Yeah,
and
there were a lot of families there
it was
actually. That
surprising.
surprised me because
Yeah.
I had never even been to the Rio. And I was surprised because I didn't know if, I heard a lot of the things about it being unsafe and all this stuff. And so I was a little wanting to be sure in not being clean. So I was very particular. I'm very particular about hotel rooms. And when we went to the pool, like I was like, well, it can't be that unsafe. It was like little kids, like a lot of families,
Yeah.
and it was great. It was awesome. It was great environment, great ambiance.
And then
There were like cabanas and day beds, which normally if
yeah.
we go to one of the pool clubs that are here in Vegas, we never get a cabana because they're like $50 million. They're so affordable at the Rio. We're like, yeah, let's get a cabana. It was great.
And we also went to a restaurant on the rooftop,
Oh yeah,
a
that
place
sounds
called
so
Voodoo Steakhouse. And so we love steak. I'm a steak guy. And we had a beautiful meal. And right there is an incredible view of the strip. And I believe the team at WPPI are going to look at maybe doing one of the parties there or something like that. Traditionally, the Palms Hotel we thought was the best view of the strip because you've got the strip and then you've got Palms Hotel that sort of overlooks it perpendicular to it. So, but the Rio is actually closer and it has the best views of the city. So being outside as well as March, I think would be a fantastic time
Mhm.
of year to be there. So one, you can eat there. Two, we have a party there as well upstairs. And the rooms, we actually walk the trade show area where the photo walks will be, where all that stuff will be. And yeah, we're very happy about it.
Yeah,
So,
it was cool. We're looking forward to it. So yeah, it'll be nice. Can't wait. There was a question. I was like, I don't know. Are we gonna stay there next year? Because we're down the street. We're not very far from it.
yeah.
But we usually stay at the hotel for the convention, even though we live here in
Yeah.
Vegas, just because it's so much easier. And after having been there, there's no question. We're definitely gonna stay there. So
Yeah, we
yeah,
just sort of
yeah,
wake up to the conference and the
yeah.
trade show and all that kind of stuff. So, we're excited about it. So yeah, please do your best to make it.
Hey, so let us know where you're from in the chat. I want to say hi to everybody. So also last week, when we asked everyone, give us some ideas of what you'd like us to talk about during the chat, Hannah had a great idea. Hannah Norette said, hey, I'd love to know the metrics. Like she said, she's a big nerd when it comes to all the statistics and the metrics for the competition and that kind of thing. Which is great because I am exactly the same way. I love statistics
That's
and
true.
I love it. So it was serendipitous that she asked me because I happen to have it all. Like this is
Great word, by the way.
thank you. Can I show you how nerdy I am? I had it already prepared when she asked me, and I'm like, great idea. Can't believe I've never thought about doing that. Here's something I prepared earlier. This is how nerdy I am. Look at like I have pie charts of like that shows all the
Well,
numbers,
you
all
should
the
have given it to them
information.
digitally, and then we could have shared them. Well, maybe we'll
Oh,
do it on Facebook.
I can't.
Yeah,
I'll put it on Facebook.
yeah,
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 you're
yeah.
right. Okay, so I thought it would be fun. Anyone else who's also interested in knowing about, that kind of stuff? This is for last year's competition. So once I have this year's competition, once it's all finished, I'll let you know what those are too. So for the online competition, because remember how we had what?
Sorry, the funny thing is that because we're just checking that YouTube is working, and then on my peripheral vision, I'm actually seeing us like 20, 30 seconds later, and I'm seeing Melissa sort of proudly showing the
My pie
things.
charts.
Anyway, it doesn't get old. Anyway, go for it.
Okay, so remember, there's a digital competition, which is open right now, and everyone enters that. And then there's the live finals judging, which is where the top 10 scores of every category get invited to come back to be in the finals. Okay, so there's different numbers for each one, right? So for the online competition, the digital competition last year, we had a total of 1,738 entries. And out of those entries, that represented 356 different photographers that entered. What's even cooler is that of those 356 photographers, 39 countries were represented. So when we say this is an international competition, it is so international. It's amazing.
It's almost a quarter of the countries in the world. That's
Yeah,
good.
it's from everywhere. We have, and then I have it broken down even more. So I'll put that part on the
You
Facebook
have
so you can
continents
see. I do.
apart from Antarctica. No one's entering from there.
No, no one entered from Antarctica. That's correct.
There's
But all the other continents, yes.
There's only 5 rings in the Olympic
For the each
logos.
continent, yeah. Yeah, well, true. That's right.
Except for Antarctica.
So we had the biggest number was from North America. North America being Canada, United States, and Mexico, of course. So that was the biggest percentage of people, but still, that only represented half. So the other half came from Europe, from Oceania, which is Australia, New Zealand.
Represent.
We had a big Caribbean contingency. So Caribbean, I counted as all of the islands in the Caribbean. So Bermuda, Bahamas, we had Trinidad and Tobago. We had a whole bunch. Asia, South America, and then there were some other, and I can't remember now what the others were. I'll have to think about it and remember. I can't remember, but I'll have to figure out. There was a small percentage that was other. But yeah, so it was really cool. Really, really international.
Yeah, Europe as well. Obviously.
Yeah. So I put Europe. Yeah, Europe is the next biggest one. Okay, so then of those, so we had 1,738 images, right? Of those, let me tell you how the awards were broken down. So we had 698 of those received an award. So that's a big percentage. Those are images that scored an 80 or above.
What percentage is that, Melissa?
Um,
I'd be very
Don't
disappointed
know
if you
off
know.
the top of my head. I
I'd say it's
don't
about
know.
40%.
Okay,
Yeah.
about 40% of images
Ish.
received a score of about 80 or above. We had 614 silvers, which is amazing, 72 silver distinctions, 11 golds, and we had one gold distinction, which is pretty awesome. Okay, so that is the online competition. Then from the finals, so we had the top 10 scores, and then we invited those photographers to enter their print into the finals to decide who would win first, second, and third place. Of those, we had 235 entries. That's what we judged live over 2 days, which was really awesome. If you missed it, definitely want to catch it this year. The cool thing is that for the first time ever, if you didn't come to WPPI in previous years, you didn't get to see the live judging. But from now on, starting from last year, we've been live broadcasting it. So even if you're not able to make it because of family obligations or you're part of the world where it's just really expensive to come to WPPI, you can still watch it online. We do the whole thing live over 2 days. It's really amazing. So for those 2 days, we had 235 entries that we went through. That represented 115 different photographers. And of that, 17 different countries were represented, which is amazing. We had North America, Europe, Oceania, Asia. It was really totally international, even in the finals, which makes sense because the online competition was really international. You would expect it to be like a nice slice of that, which it was. So we had for the live judging 3,000 people that attended the live judging for some amount of time. Because if you've never been there, it's an open room. You don't need a badge or you don't need to be registered or whatever to go in. You can go in and out as you want. And so we just go through one category after the other. You can sit for 8 hours a day, and some people do because it's so good. It's so educational. Or you can sit for like 10 minutes at a time. Some people come in between other classes. So it's really cool. You can just go in and out. But about 3,000 people came and watched the live judging at some point. That was incredible. So then we had 1,000 people or more attend the award ceremony, which was pretty cool on the second day. We had over 4,500 YouTube views of the live judging because we were broadcasting it live. And then we had over 1,200 views of people watching the award ceremony. So we do that live too. So if you can't watch the award ceremony, you can watch it on YouTube. So anyways, I just wanted to share some of those numbers with you. I thought it was pretty cool to like just see what the metrics are. And I'm really nerded out. So Hannah, I hope you're on. That was just for you, but I thought a lot of people might enjoy that also.
Hannah Banana. This is Jay Bear.
So, well, welcome Janice and Swati. Swati, I'm like having multiple conversations with Swati, and so good to see you, Swati, online and now on YouTube because I was just chatting with you, so it's kind of funny.
That was awesome.
And Jim, welcome Jim as well. So remember, if anyone has any questions, we're going to talk a little bit about what the process is for the judges when they're looking at your images, because as you're preparing them, that might help you make a couple of tweaks and understand the process a little bit more. But feel free to ask any questions in the chat. It doesn't have to be related to this at all. We're basically doing these just so we can answer your questions live, and we're picking a topic just to guide the conversation throughout. But you can ask questions about anything at all, really.
I'm just hoping that Zoe here doesn't unplug the hardwired internet. She's
know.
very close. We gave them a treat that should theoretically have lasted them 40 minutes, but they're
Lasted them 10 minutes.
yes, but all is good. So we want to give you a peek under the hood, so to speak, of how the judges determine their scores. Certainly, we've never hidden it, but we sort of want to show you a little bit more and sort of give you an understanding of the guidance that we give to the judges in terms of, how they determine their scores. So I think the biggest helpful resource that you can find very easy, maybe 1 second. No.
Zoe, come here, Mama.
No.
Come here.
There we go. The biggest resource that you could actually find, if you go to iconawards.com and then click on resources in the top menu, then you'll basically see the 10 steps to an award-winning entry, and then you've got scores and definitions. So they sort of go hand in hand. So the 10 steps are basically what the judges will look for. It's not like they read it off the chart and then they're constantly looking. They will do that though when it comes to the definitions. So if you're part of a different organization or you've been grandfathered in, or whether it's WPPI Portrait Masters or you're with another organization anywhere in the US or around the world, just don't assume that the scoring definitions and the scores mean the exact same thing.
Yeah.
We're not also here to we're here to keep everyone on a fair and level playing field and making sure that the cream rises to the top. And as we've discussed in full transparency, we're actually going to share a lot of the points that we will share with the judges before they make those scores. So after a couple of months, so at the end of September, the 1st of October, we actually learn who has entered and who's not, because obviously we want to make sure that we get the pool of judges, of experienced professionals, and make sure that we have experts in those genres that will be judging those particular categories.
A question that comes up sometimes for us that I want to ask you
Yeah.
is we do get a lot of photographers that enter who are judges in other competitions. And do we allow judges for the Icon Awards to also enter the Icon Awards? And is that not a conflict?
Sure. That's a very good question. So the answer is, is a judge allowed to actually enter the competition? The answer is yes, but a judge is not allowed to judge a category that they've actually entered into. In previous years, we allowed that, and it was full transparency. There was no way that a judge could manipulate the scores, but often perception is reality, and many believe that this could be some kind of manipulation or anything like that. To remove that perception and that remote, ridiculously unlikely event that could happen, which I'll prove to you shortly that it wouldn't have, we're basically removing that. So we can't basically preclude a judge who is an expert in their field not to judge within other categories. It's simply that you are not allowed to judge a category that you're invested in. It's as simple as that. When it comes to the finals, let's say, for example, someone like Kelly Brown enters. Okay, so we all know her that, I mean, she's a beast. She can pretty much do anything, let's just face it. But she's obviously known for her newborn, baby, family, work, and pets, probably more than anything. If she was to enter newborn, she can't judge newborn, but that means she could actually judge family and so on. Now, let's say, for example, she doesn't make the finals, and this is several months later. It would be a waste not to use her talents that she could judge the newborn finals because she didn't make the finals. Now, if she is a contender as a finalist within a category of a division, then obviously she won't be able to actually judge the grand awards, which is basically picking the first place of every category and then judging the main one. So just know that there's no way of anyone manipulating anything. But yeah, that was a long answer.
That
but
was a long
that was
answer.
a full transparency.
Yeah,
So
yeah. These
yeah,
these answers are also on the website, but we're just trying to give you a brief rundown of everything. So let's talk about what the judges go through when the competition closes on October 1st. That's when, as Jerry said, we look to see who has entered and who has not entered. And then we find our judges based on that. So we find judges that have not entered a particular category. And so we don't just find 5 judges for the whole competition. We look instead at finding a panel for each category. So you might get a judge. Let's take Kelly Brown, for example, because we've said her name. Kelly Brown, who only is a judge for 2 categories in the entire competition, where you might get another judge who, didn't enter at all this year, is a judge for 8 categories during the competition. So we don't do it across the board. We do it per category, which gives us the most amount of flexibility.
Right.
So once everything is finished, we've picked our judges for each of the panels. What do you tell them? How do you get started? We've given them a link because it's all online, because everyone's all over the world. All of our judges our judges are representative of the entrance, so that's also international. So we send them a link to the images. And what do you tell them? What instructions do you give them?
Yeah, so it's interesting because I'm very passionate about this process. So we need to make sure that they're doing the right thing. And ultimately, let's say, for example, maybe let's base it upon if we were teaching a new judge. Okay, so that might be a good foundation to start with. So if you're following along, I know that you're watching us on YouTube, but if you want to go on iconawards.com, click on resources and go to the 10 steps to the award-winning entry. So if you see me looking up to the right, you know what I'm doing. So obviously, the very first thing that a judge will look for is impact. You can't help but think, does that hit me? Whether it's graphically, whether it's emotionally, whether it's the color palette, there is something that just makes you stop and stare at it, and it becomes compelling. So the first thing we do is look for strong first impression and impact. Okay. So traditionally, when an image scores well, it does have that strong impact. Now, when you linger on that image, if there are faults with technique, execution, or something, it doesn't just have shock value and the score goes up automatically. It has to be executed really well. So traditionally, it has to sort of inspire you emotionally as well. Now, the step two that we've got on that particular list is point of difference. Okay, originality, creativity, and again, this is for the scores that go a little bit higher. So your everyday work might be saleable and consistent and look really, really good, and certainly you can get an 80 to an 84 with that range, possibly even more. It's just that when you're looking at those higher score range, that originality and creativity, and I often say in concept, execution, or technique, those three are really important. So, is this imaginative, creative, original in concept, execution, technique? You might think, what's the difference? Concept could be obviously the idea. The execution is basically the way you did it. The technique could be the finishing, the finessing of it in terms of print or matting. Again, you can be creative with that as well.
So are you saying that someone who enters only client work may not it may not be a good idea to only enter client work? Is that what you're trying to say? Or that it won't score well?
I mean, there's your bread and butter. There's your bread and butter day-to-day work, and then there's moments that shine a little bit brighter. So if you're a wedding photographer, would you get that classic shot of a bride that anyone can do that is not really that memorable? I'm saying enter a good version of it. And we tell the judges that if there is a cliche image that has been done, and again, we'll come to the definitions in a moment, when it exceeds or it's within a range of a scoring definition, yes, your day-to-day work can really work really well. 99.9% of all the work that I've ever entered in my career has all been from a client shoot. It could have been a personal shoot, but it wasn't like I'm going to shoot something with the intention to enter it. Many people do that, which is fantastic, but do not feel like your client work is just going to be, put to the by the wayside. Your client work can be solid, can be strong. Is it above average? And what does that even mean? We'll come to that shortly.
Another great example, I just posted it in our Facebook group. If you guys are part of our Facebook group today, celebrating Ravi Madi, who just got his master designation at the last competition. He's a wedding and portrait photographer based in Quebec. And I said nearly all, I think all of his entries for the past 10 years have been straight up client work. And he just got his master designation, which he had been working for a long time. So to back your point, absolutely can, do that on client work only.
100%. Absolutely. Okay. So the point three is the in-camera artistry. I'm not talking about the in-camera artistry category. Is it, what did you do in camera? What is the degree of difficulty? And then when it comes to the in-camera artistry, is it in focus, if that was your intent? Is the exposure good? Do you have all those fundamental things which sometimes people forego? So you've got to be careful. And also, just so you know, from our perspective, we tell the judges, if something is obviously wrong, understand that may have been on purpose. Like, give the photographer, the entrant, the benefit of the doubt. Was this done on purpose? And what angle does this give us? Like, what perspective does it give us? Does it add to the emotional raw content? I'll give you an example. Like, I often talk about when a couple are hugging, let's say in this case a heterosexual couple, where I'm hugging and I'm putting my hands around her waist. I call it a waist of a waist. So slide that hand back and expose those curves. Doesn't matter what size, doesn't matter at all. And let's say, for example, but if that rawness of that embrace, the hands are there, then that's okay. And again, there'll be judges that are a bit more nuanced with posing. There'll be a bit nuanced with lighting. What we try to do is we choose 5 judges that have a nice blend of perspectives. One could be more versed in post-production. One's more posy. One's more emotive. Yes, they're given all the same definitions, but we make sure that we don't put the same kind of person. Otherwise, it'd be boring and everyone would score like a robot. Okay, post-production. Obviously, at first glance, you may look at an image and it might be great, but things like detail in highlights, detail in shadows. It doesn't always have to be the case, because you could be photographing a scene with an overcast sky. There's no detail. That's fine. So we have to learn that post-production is really, really important. And also, when we talk about post-production, the judges are explicitly told you must be looking at these images on a calibrated monitor. And you yourselves, if you're doing this as well, we have to make sure that you're looking at your images under a certain condition that you can see detail, see quality, and understand the equivalency. And perhaps we'll go into more detail in another section as well. Okay, step 5. This is a big one. The emotion, the story, the communication. What is it telling you? What is the story behind each of these images? So that's an obvious one, but often something could be technically perfect, but there's no soul to it. Think of like a someone like and I don't mean to disrespect him. It's quite the opposite. Someone like, let's say, for example, Bob Dylan, who's known to be an incredible storyteller, probably more than a technique singer. But what he lacks in that blasting big voice that we often hear, we will get in the storytelling, the annotation, and the lyric. So sometimes you don't have to be perfect technically, but you just need to emote. Obviously, if you can do both, then even better. Okay, print quality presentation, that's if applicable. Obviously, that comes with the finals and everything like that. But certainly there's ways of presenting imagery. You can obviously, in the creative division, you can actually add embellishments and different things like that. But just know that we can do things. Lighting, obviously, technically, it's a big part of it. Are you lighting not just for flattery, if that's your purpose, but are you actually lighting for purpose? In other words, if you want to make someone look sinister, you're not going to use that flattering, pretty light. You might be using light that's a little bit different. So whatever that lighting is that you're using, is it helping communicate the message you're trying to convey to the viewer, in this case, the judges? Posing, placements of elements, and design. Obviously, these are meant to be probably broken up into even like 50 steps. But in terms of posing, if you are doing a pose, is it effective? Again, is it flattering if that's what your purpose is? And is it purposeful for the message that you're trying to convey? Doesn't always meant to be flattering. It depends on what you're looking for. And when we say placements of elements in design, obviously when it comes to photojournalism, posing is not an element. But it could be where you're standing. Are you effectively communicating something? Are you standing in a position where the lighting is helping communicate the message? Are you standing in a way that the background is complementing and framing the subject matter? Is the negative space contributing to that strong feeling that you're trying to convey? And then, of course, you've got step 9, which is composition, cropping, and point of interest. You know, composition is such a big one. I often will teach my students, and I'll talk about, like, are you born with it? Well, what are you born with as a photographer? I think you're only born with an eye for composition. Yes, you could be a good people person, a natural, flamboyant kind of a person, which will help you be a good photographer of people. But I think you're born with the eye for composition. The rest you sort of have to learn. You're not born knowing lighting or posing or whatever. So if it doesn't come naturally to you, ask yourself, where do I place the point of interest, and how will this affect the impact of that photograph and that design based upon what the judges are seeing? Am I drawing attention with the lighting, the pose, the composition with what I want that person to not only see, but to feel? It's really, really important. Step 10, and this is a big one. Is it a quintessential like example of that genre? And when I say that, I don't mean it's a puppy in the pet category has to have puppy dog eyes and whatever. I'm saying, is it like, this is 2024 photography in maternity? This is whatever it may be. So that's an important one. Is it finesse? Does it have refinement? So look at those in your own time, but just generally, that foundation is what we will drum into the judges to understand what makes an award-winning image. Now, go on.
And it doesn't mean that, so if you go, as Jerry said before, you go on the Icon Awards website, go under resources, and you'll see 10 steps to an award-winning image. Just print it out. We encourage the judges to have it printed out and next to them as they're looking at every image. So they're constantly referring to it. So it makes sense that when you're trying to pick out your images, that you're also looking at it. We're not saying that every single entry that you enter should like nail every single one of these 10 steps. What we're saying is that the more of these steps that you really just get and nail, the higher your score will be. So go into the winners gallery, for example, and have that sheet of paper and take a look at like the ones that won first place, second place, third place, whatever. And then you'll see how the different elements all fit in, and it kind of makes more sense. So we're not saying you've got to be perfect in every single one of those 10 steps. I mean, no one is ever going to be. If they do, then those are the images that score 100, which happen in like once every 10 years. But the more of those steps that you really get, the higher your score will be. And the more that maybe the steps that aren't really hitting the mark on your image, then the lower your score will be. So it gives you just a great way to just sort of gauge where that might go. You may not be looking to just win first place with every single one of your entries. There's always some that you're like, this one has the potential to get there, but not all of them. Usually you have some that you're like, this is just a really good, solid entry. I think it's going to do well. Probably not win first place, maybe, but I'm going to get some points with it to, accumulate your honors of excellence points. And that's completely okay. So that's when you would use this guide to see where it might fall and see if you're going to get any points with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And just so you know too, those 10 points, we don't tell the judges, okay, let's rate this out of 10, out of 10, out of 10, out of 10. Let's score, all right, there's 8 out of 10 for this point, 9 out of 10 for this point, and then gather it up. It's not that scientific. It's a general guide because let's face it, again, when you're looking at art, listening to art, experiencing art in whatever form, a lot of it's how you feel. But I often liken this to, like, in terms of technical and emotional content, we tell the judges, okay, can we forego technique for emotion? Yes and no. And let me explain. Would a Ferrari that has an incredible engine, an incredible paint job with a dent in it actually be a contender for that competition? Well, no, it would not. So in other words, if you do something just so obviously you've missed something so obvious, something like a dent could, metaphorically, in this case, let's say, for example, you could have really bad noise in the shadow areas. You could have like a halo effect around somewhere that you retouch. It could be something really like that, but the rest is so amazing, it's hard to forgive. So if there's something that's sort of like, well, it's not really bad, but it's not really good, but there's something so impactful emotionally, then yes, that might go up. So remember, this is subjective. We're not talking about an exact science. We're talking about a subjective, um, judging of images that are judged over 5 judges. And the score is averaged out, and then we basically get to a decimal point, to a score, and that's basically it. So from there, what happens now? So we guide the judges into this process. Um, Also, by the way, too, we tell the judges this, but this is a good tip for you guys. Whenever you're looking at imagery and you're about to enter it, put it on your laptop, walk away from it, and then wake up to it. Like, wake up with fresh eyes and go into a dark room and have a look at the screen. You'll see it with different eyes. You may even put it up on a TV, something that's a little bit different, a projector if you have one, and you'll start to see things a little bit different. Now, here is the points that we tell the judges. This is literally, I'm reading from the PDF that we give the judges and we do training from. Now, we ask people to score images on their own merits, not how they compare with other images. In other words, well, this image is this score. Well, if I gave it this score, then this one has to be whatever it's meant to be. So just know that, yes, there's some method to that, but it's important to understand that we only compare images, like specifically an image to an image, when after we look at the finalists, after we've celebrated them, and then we're trying to determine first, second, third place. Now, yes, when we're talking about definitions, we're looking at the definitions and the image independent of anything else. So once you develop that baseline, it's important that the judges be consistent. And I'll say this very honestly, and I've been saying this behind closed doors, and I'm telling you I will kick the judges' asses very specifically and say, if you're an asshole judge, as in if you're hard, and when I say hard, I'm not saying, and when I say asshole, I say it tongue in cheek. I'm not saying you're just deliberately taking scores away. Some people have a more sophisticated palate, and some people might be more responsive to emotion rather than technique and everything. We have a blend of those judges. Just know that whatever they do, they need to be consistent. They can't all of a sudden wake up in the middle of a category and, you know what, I've judged everything 5 points too high now, so I have to actually go a lot less. So we don't do any recalibrating within a category, and to be honest, across judging. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes,
Yeah.
very much so.
So that's an important one. So we tell the judges that the scores must, this is capital letters in bold, underline, be based on the definitions below. And I'll talk about that, what that means, and not how you judge other competitions. Okay. So when we talk about determining scores, we ask the judges to give a full range of scores. In other words, if you get an 80 or above, that's considered an award level, silver an award, and it's considered 1 point towards your honors of excellence. We say use that full range. Is this at the higher end of that score? Is it an 84 or is it an 80? Did it cross over the line? How much did it cross over the line? Because I feel like in years gone past, and I've witnessed judging just over the years, but you tend to have a muscle memory. But I'm like, you know what? Like that average, and we will tell people this, guys, there could be literally 1 point that you need for your masters, and you feel like you've got it this year, and you've traveled all the way from another country to receive that particular award, and you can't be lazy because someone has worked their ass off for this. Don't get me wrong. We're not just giving trophies out because it makes people happy. If you get it, you deserve it, and it's fantastic. So it's really, really important. Okay, so full range of scores.
Yeah, we're really proud that our judges take that really seriously. Like
Yeah.
they're really good about being passionate and making sure they're not too tired when they're scoring and that kind of thing, because we know how important it is.
Yeah, and we give them plenty of time. We give them plenty of notice, and we make sure we're all good with that. So now, what we've everyone will like the guidance that we give the judges is certainly appreciate the impact and the emotional content of the image first, because that's naturally what you do anyway. So what we say to the judges, just absorb it. Just let it sink in a little bit. Just stare at it, absorb it, feel it. Don't be too picky. Just inhale the image. Then the guidance is this: first, determine whether it's an image consistent with standard professional practice within the genre of what you're judging. Okay. If it's not, then your score should reflect that with a score of 74 and under. Okay. So what we'll do now, like if the image at a minimum is considered at best standard professional practice, then your score should be in the 75 plus range. Now let's put a bit of a bookmark in that, because what I want to do now is I want to go to the definitions and look at those, because what I'm about to tell you beyond that is going to be specifically related. Okay, so let's do that. So if you're following along with us, I wonder at this point, do we show the actual screen here?
No, and I don't think we need to
Okay.
read everything out. I mean, this
Yeah.
is all on the website. We just wanted to give you
Yeah.
a quick overview, honestly. Like us repeating what you're reading doesn't make much
Yeah,
sense either.
yeah, it's more than nuance, I guess.
Yeah.
This is what I'm saying. So, all right, so let's have a look at it. So, if you look at the resources and then go to scores and definitions, you'll clearly see all the scoring ranges. Okay, so when I mentioned just before that we encourage the judges to basically say, well, let's first look, is it a standard professional practice within the genre that you're judging? We're not saying, is it great, whatever. First determine, is it good professional practice? Great. If it's not, it's a 74 and under. If it is, you know it's going to be a 75 plus. Now, when we're talking in that 75 plus range, it's no award. 75 to 79 is no award. It's good, saleable work consistent with standard professional practice. It took a long time to come up with those words, but we feel like if you score in that range, don't be disheartened. I might shoot an entire wedding of several thousand images, maybe give 1,200 to my clients. And if all of my images are within the 75 to 79 range, that's a really good wedding. So that's okay. Now, every so often, like you might find, how do we get to that silver and award range? That means 80 to 84. We're saying it's above average. You have to determine, then the obvious question would be, what is average? Well, what is average is going to be different in every genre. The perfect example, I'll go back to Kelly Brown. You know, Kelly Brown, among probably before her and Getty's, like I'd say on a global scale, and then certainly Kelly, she, among many, had lifted up the industry with newborn category. So now, basically having taught a whole generation and lifting people up to actually shoot newborns in a way that, you know, we hadn't seen in our generation, this standard has gone up. So what maybe it would have gotten an 85, 89, 92 a few years ago might be in that 80 to 84 range, because that particular image has been popularized by so many people and it is doable by a lot of people. Therefore, that genre. So what we're basically telling the judges is this: if you see an image that is above average skill and technique in most areas, notice that I didn't say the word imaginative, It doesn't have to be creative. It doesn't have to be original. It's above average. It's better than your everyday work. And here's the other thing too. That begs the other question. A judge that we choose, you would say is, towards the top of their game. So what may be an average for someone who's maybe more sophisticated, more experienced, may be higher than most. We're not talking about, well, the judge should judge it based upon their average. No, we look at the industry. We actually now, of course, we have a precedent with the imagery in the galleries. We're now going to be forwarding the judges, the galleries, and saying, have a look at what is being judged between an 80 to 84 range, what's been celebrated as above average in most areas. And then now we've got a bit of a baseline, and we can sort of work above and beyond that and towards that. So once we determine, is it above average in most areas within that genre? Note the word most. Images in this range don't have to be flawless, unique, or original. We tell the judges this. Okay. Now, when determining if an image is consistent with standard photography or what is above average, again, we tell the judges about, again, their standard may be a little bit different to your traditional everyday average. Okay.
I'd love to know what you guys also do to select the images that you want to enter. What are your techniques that may help other people to see whether an image might be suitable for competition? What little tips and tricks have you found over the years that may work? I saw Gary just posted something really good where he suggested printing out the image and then looking at it from different angles. Why do you think that would be helpful? Like if you print out an image and then you flip it and you turn it around, why is that helpful? Because I know you've done that before too.
Yeah, technique has been popularized and championed by many, including David Williams and many others over the years, is that when you stare at an image, you're too close to it. And sometimes you have to void yourself of that previous sort of experience of that image. So flipping it around now just makes it an object and shapes. And then your point of interest, is it to where you want it to go? Or it could be somewhere else. If you, for example, are entering, this, do you want to close the door? Let me just close the door. You probably didn't hear that through the shotgun mic, but they've gone crazy again. It's important to know too that if you get a colorful image and you want to enter it in color, just turn it to black and white for a moment. You're starting to look at contrast and shapes and depth and texture in a way that you wouldn't before. Then when you put on the color bias, then you'll find that there are certain colors that are quite polarizing, quite strong. So you sort of got to be careful with that as well. Remember, have a look at the galleries that are there. It doesn't mean just copy an image that's already been popularized and hope for the best. It means there's the baseline, there's where we are, and it doesn't mean that your everyday image can't get up there. Just remember, this is subjective. There's not an exact science, but we offer every guidance to the judges to give us a particular range to sort of be in. Okay. So for example, if the image is cliche within that genre, let's say the classic bride, turn her body away from the light source, face back in, she's holding her veil. Traditionally, it's in an archway, beautiful light, nice background. There's nothing really wrong with it. It's just a really good shot for what it is. And if it's better than your average, the finessing of those little elements that I just mentioned, then that might be in the 80 to 84 range. So now once the image is determined above average in most areas, then we ask the judges to ask themselves, does the image represent, and this is the scoring definition of 85 to 89, which the base word is excellent, but it's that silver distinction award range. Is this an excellent use of imagination, skill, and technique? So now we're saying it's imaginative. We're not even saying it's original or it's unique. There's imagination. And again, I'll say those words again in concept, execution, or technique. So you're now in the 85 to 89 range. Okay. Now the 90 to 94 range is gold. Okay. So that basically means it's exhibiting outstanding skills in all areas and originality. Notice the word outstanding. It stands out. Now, yes, we tell the judges not to compare, but this one just hits you. So without even wanting to, it'll actually just open you up and you're like, it hits you in the face. Is it original? Is it outstanding? Is it exceptional? and so on and so forth. So you're in that particular range. So as you go into the 90, 95, 99 range, we're approaching the highest level of imagination, creativity, technique. And then, of course, platinum, it doesn't mean that it's perfect. Is there any such thing as a perfect anything, really? But if it's original, if there's no errors, if it grabs you emotionally, and I tell people that 90 and above, you'll never really forget the image. It's in your brain forever. 100, it's burnt in your brain forever. But 90 and above, think about like if you go to WPPI, if you're watching the image, it's in your brain forever. So also we tell the judges too that even though that they're judging a particular genre that they're an expert in, you'll also have a particular bias. And when I say bias, like people know me for my posy stuff. I do a lot of photojournalistic stuff. I don't really wave it in people's faces, but I do it as well. It doesn't matter whether I like something or not. It's I must respect it and respect what's in front of me, and I look at it independently. So we tell the judges you can't be biased to those particular styles that inherently is the way you would do it. It's not about us. It's not about the judges. It's about what's in front of us. That's important that we remind them every single time. Yeah.
And remember, like all of these are just, it's feedback that we're giving and guidance that we're giving to the judges. It doesn't mean that if your image that you're looking to enter doesn't have imagination, isn't excellent in most areas, it doesn't mean not to enter it.
That's right.
That's not what we're saying at all. This is what they're looking at to figure out what the score is. Your image may not get a 100. That's okay. It still is an image that's worth entering. Remember, anything above an 80 gets points. You could be working towards getting your associates, your masters, your double masters. You know, there are many photographers that have their double and triple masters who have never won a category. That shouldn't be the goal of this.
Yeah.
The goal is to gauge where your work is at, to keep growing, to keep pushing yourself. And the majority of that will be with images that are not even contenders to win first, second, and third place.
Yeah.
And that's completely okay. This is just the guidelines that we give to the judges to work out what score it is so that a photographer can figure out where they're at with their work. If you score an 80 or above, you're killing it with your work, especially if you score an 80 or above with your client work, with something that you just have delivered to your clients. That's amazing. And you have lucky clients. If that's what you're getting, if those are the scores that you're getting, if you're getting silvers and silver distinctions, you have very lucky clients who are getting that work. So just keep that in mind. We're not saying this to discourage you from entering images at all. These are the guidelines that we're giving to judges to work out what score they get.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is it's not an exact science. Like, for example, if you look at something like gymnastics, recently Olympics, they have a difficulty score, they have whatever. It's like, if you make this mistake, we'll take it off, whatever. Think of it like art is subjective. And like on paper, should Bohemian Rhapsody be any good? This was like one of the longest songs ever released. It goes from crazy rock to soft and opera and whatever. So on paper, it's ridiculous, but it just feels amazing and it lasts a test of time. Therefore, it's widely considered one of the best songs ever created. So just know that it's those risks that you take, that I've taken in the past, that often work out. And if they don't, the process has been so fun. No one can see. Here's the other thing too, that actually, I'll leave this as a finale because it's an important point. So I want to end up with this very shortly. Remind me of scores reflecting where you are and stuff like that. So just remember, I mean, this is a paragraph taken straight out of the judging manual, so to speak, that is taught physically in person, but as a reminder, for some judges, emotional content can supersede perceived flaws. For other judges, technical perfection can supersede flaws in emotional content. Each judge must evaluate the entry and make reasonable, subjective and objective assessments based on the judging criteria and considerations outlined below. So this is what I will share, because this is what the judges actually see when they're judging your images. So let's do that. Like I said, we promise you full transparency. Let's do this right now.
So yeah, these are what Jerry's showing you is the documents that we get, that we share with the judges. This is the training that we go through with them. So yeah. I don't think there's any other competition that
No.
shows this.
This is
Like,
the
this is
judging.
the judging console. This is what the judges look at when they're scoring your images.
And when I was designing this, I did not want, I wanted it to be easy as possible for the judges so they can absorb the image, not have to type anything. It's literally just a mouse click. So what happens is, obviously we blurred out the image because it's an active entry, but if you look at those words, the definition, we're not even saying to you, to the judges, hey, this is a silver. We don't want them to think in terms of silver, gold, whatever. We're just saying, look at, is this above average? Like, again, we're saying, first of all, is it um, good saleable work consistent with standard professional practice? That's a good baseline. If you've passed that hurdle, then you go up. If you haven't passed that hurdle, then you work out where it falls. As you pass the hurdles and you keep on going, we are consistently telling the judges, you must look at the verbiage. This is not just some arbitrary number that you say, well, that's an 83. Well, no, is it? If it's an 83, that means it's above average skill and technique in most areas, according to you at this experience level, at this point, when you're judging it. And then all the judges will do, they'll click on it and then they'll submit it and it's done. There is no going back. That once there's no, I've got to think twice about it. We tell them to take their time, absorb the image in front of them, and then click on next to it. So if you've got any questions about this, please put them in the comments there. But like I said, that's that is what we were discussing. So let me come back here. 1 second. It's this. Stop sharing. Okay, very good.
I hope you like this, enjoy this little peek behind the scenes, and that it's helpful for you guys to know what we're telling the judges and what they're looking for. Like, this is straight from, the horse's mouth, so to speak, where that's exactly what they're hearing and how they're looking at your entries. So, with the hope that you can look at your entries the same way.
So the important part of it too, we wanted to divide the process of not having to judge and critique at the same time. It's a different mindset. So when we were sort of just looking at this and with fresh eyes and ears and everything, and taking everything that you guys have told us over the years, and as a judge and all the roles that we've played over the years, I'm like, well, I'm sitting there looking at definitions and looking at imagery. Do I want to sit there and actually talk about the images right there and then? And do I want to type it up? It's a different mindset completely. So right now, the judges will go in, 5 judges will go in and score it. And then basically that's it. Once we get the scores, then they're averaged out. We determine the scores. Then we know whether you've got, where you got points, you got not, did you get up there or not, or whatever. Then, of course, it's important that when you're checking out, you have the actual ability to get a video feedback critique. So just know that, again, if you're tuning in for the very first time with us, on the website right now, if you're new to our ecosystem, click on, I think it's resources or critique? It's critiques, actually. Click on critiques, and you'll see the critique gallery of 2023. There are over 400 images that you will listen to the judges, the mentors' voice and face, and you'll see them, and they'll actually annotate with their finger, and it'll be there. It's incredible. Most of the critiques average 2 to 3 minutes long, which is incredible. So yes, that's an incredible resource for you to look at. So please do that. I wanted to remind her of something I sort of wanted to finish off with. Yes, yeah. I got it. Okay, there we go. That was a silent conversation we just had. So here's an important thing, guys. Is it scary to enter? Yes. No matter how many times I've entered over the years, when I could enter, your heart's on your sleeve, you're freaking out a little bit, and you're like, well, hey, what do you think about my work? And you're asking 5 peers what they think about your work. Don't forget, it is one image at that particular time and that particular moment. In as much as we direct the judges, we can't, again, just make it too clinical and they're robots, and because then technically then everyone would give the exact same score. Everything's an 83, everything's this. It can't be too precise. There's got to be a little wiggle room for subjective and objective perspectives based upon the criteria that we've outlined today. So the biggest mistake that I think a lot of people make is, you could be working in the industry for 10 years, and let's say you get a 78. That's good saleable work consistent with standard professional practice. That means you're doing exactly what you should be doing. That's really, really good. Now, is it an award? In this case, we're saying, well, we have to define it somehow. We're not saying that in our system, that is not really an award. That's what you should be doing. So we sort of what this the whole idea of the Icon Awards is that we want to reward that extra effort, that extra oomph. It's that, and I often basically say, and this is a metaphor that I've given the judges before. Okay, let's say everyone bake a lasagna for me. If it tastes the way it should, then we're basically saying it's a 75 to 79. It's not memorable. I don't dislike it. It tastes the way it should. Okay. Then I say, all right, what if the lasagna just tastes a little bit better? What if there's a little bit more cinnamon in it? Cinnamon is subjective. Some people like it, some people don't. No different than seeing an image. For some people, it'll have impact. Some people, it doesn't. So a judge might say, look at that and say, you know what? It's above average. That lasagna is above average in most ways. It's not the most original thing I've ever seen or tasted. Then I'm like imagination. So the 85 to 89, we keep on going with that analogy and metaphor. Is this an excellent use of imagination, skill, or technique in terms of a dish? Then, of course, well, how many ways can you friggin' make a lasagna? Okay, so obviously with art and photographs and the creative perspective, there's obviously we have more wiggle room than be confined to one particular dish. But I tell the judges that when you taste it and it is one of the best that you've tasted, there's just something unique about the presentation. It might taste a little bit better than normal, but it's just the way it's presented and plated. Oh my goodness, that could be the way it's matted, or could be the way it's retouched. It's elevated. Well, now we're talking. So I often talk, and if you've heard me teach before, I often talk in metaphors so people can understand. And even though there's some judges that have been judging with us for a long, long time, we don't just say, well, you've done it for a long time, you're fine, no need to train you or no need to recalibrate you. Every single year, we train from scratch and we recalibrate. And I've got to tell you, our judges have always been so eager, wouldn't you say? Like, what can we do,
Yeah, and that's a really important point. It doesn't matter how long you've been a judge with the Icon Awards. We insist it's mandatory that everyone has to go through it, because judges will judge for other competitions.
Right.
They may forget, they may not. This way, we can be sure that they are familiar. They've refreshed their minds with the rules for the Icon Awards, with those 10 steps, that they're refreshed with that. That way we know if we're going through it together as a team, then we know that they are recalibrated for that. So that's why it's really important. And if judges are not able to make it, then unfortunately they can't judge that year. That's how strongly we feel about it.
Yeah. And to finish up what I was saying, the important part of it is please, please, please do not be discouraged that if you enter an image and all your hopes and dreams are based upon the result of the score of this image, first of all, I discourage that because the process was fun for you. It should have been fun for you. Whether it was for a client, you got paid for that work, people bought it. But what will win the hearts of your, the clients may not be what wins the heart of the judges. Does that make sense? So you could have had an album or an image that literally made you tens of thousands of dollars, and then judges will determine that this particular, image is a 78. Does it mean that you're just average? It doesn't mean that. It's just on this particular day or this moment, 5 judges put their scores in based upon definitions that determine that this is what it basically is or means. So my suggestion is that understand that that's the process that we take with our judges. Understand that please don't be defined by one image, that's who you are. That is just, think of it like you sang a song and people just scored it. Doesn't mean that every song that you sing is bad or average or above average. We know that when you make a dish, when you sing a song, when you do an artistic endeavor, when you play a sport, there'll be days where you thrive. There'll be days where you stand out. There's days where you get creative with the way you play or sing or whatever it is that you love to do. So, and also don't be intimidated by some of the elaborate entries, because some of the simplest images over the years, would you agree?
Yes.
Have actually done the best. And probably one of the better examples that I remember, David Bastianoni, an incredible photographer from Italy, several years ago, I remember him just basically doing an image that had a sort of a current sort of political perspective on it. And it was just a figure with a coffin and a religious symbol on a white background. and it won the grand award.
It did. It
It,
was very, yeah,
it
and very,
so simple.
yeah, it was very simply lit, but beautifully lit.
So
Yeah,
simple.
it
So
was awesome.
just remember that it could just be something that makes the judges stop and stare. Often what we think is the embellishments are going to make that. Now, yes, there are some images that there's multiple images in there. It's fantastical, but then there's some that it's just a portrait of a person's face and their eyes are piercing and you
Mm,
look in their soul and you just want to start crying by looking at that image. Don't
mm,
underestimate the power of your perspective and the communication that you had with that particular client. Sometimes just what you feel is not what the judges feel. And that could be by your cropping, your perspective, your lighting, whatever. Just so sometimes it translates, sometimes it doesn't. But you know what? I believe that the foundation to success is so-called failure, and it's the stepping stones to success. So I just see it as an ongoing journey, and that's why we're so passionate about this process. But just know that we are very passionate again about training the judges into a particular understanding of how this should work. So yeah, guys, it's been fun to share, and maybe you want to give the guys a bit of a glimpse as to what's happening next week. We're really excited about next week.
oh yeah, next week. So now I was like, I don't know what's happening. Next week we'll have our live chat, same time. But we're gonna have a special guest. We're gonna bring Tony Hewitt on board. If you've been involved with the awards at all, then you're very familiar with Tony. He's part of our team. We've helped brainstorm a lot of ideas together with Tony.
Yep.
He was also our chairperson on last year at the live judging, and he was very involved with the whole process. He is he has a great he's a great resource when it comes to putting together your images for competition and what to select and what images make good entries for competition. So, and we've heard him give this presentation before. I think he gave it at WPPI a couple of years ago, and it's really good and it's really helpful. So we asked him to come on and share that with all of you guys. So he'll be coming on next week. So that's next Monday at this time, same time. And Tony's going to share some of that with all of you guys. So it'll be really helpful to have on board as you're going through all your entries. It's, trust me, we saw it. It's really, really good.
Yeah, it's basically what makes an award-winning image, and he has a very unique way of breaking down things to look for. So he'll actually even simplify it even further than we did today. And he's been a breadth and depth of knowledge and wisdom
Yeah,
over the
he's
years,
amazing.
and we couldn't have done what we did without him, and obviously many in our leadership group. So thank you to Tony, and those who know him know how special he is.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, thank you for your time. Any other questions or final goodbyes? Or we're all
I
good?
think, yeah, say thank you for everybody for tuning in and watching, and we'll do it again next week. Hey.
See you soon, guys. Thanks for your time. Thank you.